Welcome to the Scott Outpost Investigators Podcast special episode on Tower, Zenless Zone Zero Tower. I'm your host, Softy Mage, and we have a co-host, Sevadra,
Hello.
and a co-host of the chat from Canada.
Hi, hello.
So today we're going to be doing, like I said, the special episode on Tower and just talk about our experience with Zenless Zone Zero Endless Tower that just came out recently. Talk about the rewards, talk about the scoring, that new feature, talk about our grievances, our struggles, our strategies that we went through, and a couple of cheat codes that I know on level X.4 that you guys might be having questions about for the mimics. We'll go over that a little bit too. And if there's really bang boos or extra healing that we might want to talk to as well. But we'll be jumping around topics, so no particular order. So
Yeah,
what's your guys' initial thoughts on this tower?
You want to go first, Chap?
yeah, sure. To me, it was kind of a blur. I already did a lot of work on the original tower, and they didn't do a whole lot to change the major gameplay. I do like that it's more of a game-wide thing that they're making community tech more a part of the game and more known to people, that it's something you can do. But overall, the tower is kind of just, for me, a bit of a side distraction more than anything, especially since the major rewards disappear about halfway through. So
About
that's kind of
halfway
my
through.
well, when I
15.
say major rewards, I mean the polychrome rewards, the rewards that a lot of people would care about.
Yeah,
Not to say you shouldn't care about the other ones.
Level 15 is when the polychrome rewards do stop. But I would try to go towards as far as you can, because I have reached level 75 so far.
Yeah, I
just before this episode recording got to floor 60 at the behest of yours truly, Softy Mage.
yeah, and I finished floor 50 because I did the full thing. The full thing that the exclusive rewards cover, or most of it. And I think that's good enough.
Yeah, after floor 50 is mostly just Denny's, but after floor 15, when the poly rewards stop, I think it's all master copies, or at least a fair few master copies for disc crafting. So it's not nothing, but it's also not pulls.
Yeah.
Let's just go right to rewards. Do you think we got a good rewards from this, or do you think they still need to improve on the rewards for Tower?
I think it's fine enough for what it is.
I think it is wise and also still good that they stop poly rewards really early on to the point where it's like very accessible to majority of the player base, because you get a pretty handy amount of the new enemies in the rotation for this tower. Like looking through the floors, it's basically all of the enemies that were debuted in the 2.0 patch, and then also 2.1. Like they added a whole bunch of the small mobs with the Bangriac Frog, the Exaltus minions, Avarice, Flame Cantor, and then you still get some of the classics mixed in there too, like a Dullahan, a Thanatos here and there, Farbuti. But they also added Tepesh and the Miasmic Priest and the Miasmic Fiend. And that's all of the enemies that encompass up to floor 15 for rewards. So if you've been playing the recent content, then that's really fresh in your mind. And I think that that's a good balance for the majority of the player base.
Yeah,
As
because
for what goes on after all of that, I honestly don't care all that much for the rewards. I just really like the challenge itself, but I probably would give slightly bigger rewards to the dedicated player base. Like even if it's just like 10,000 Denny's instead of 5,000 Denny's, like that difference does add up.
See, for me, I was more gonna say that like we gotta remember that we in general are more of a minority in the broader community. You want the rewards to be accessible to people, but you also want them to be, you know, substantial for the people who are dedicated, so that the people who are dedicated know that their effort isn't wasted.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish they had more milestone rewards. Like you reach a certain point and they give you a huge boost instead of just a small trickle of Denny's.
So like
But then,
you mean like every 10 floors it's like a bigger set of rewards.
Well,
That's
Yeah.
do they reset it every 10 floors? I kind of like that idea.
yeah, it doesn't need to be like polychrome either. I don't think that you should reward polychrome for people who are that far, because then that takes the free budget that they definitely have in the background and dilutes it to a point where some people just won't be able to do it, especially after some of the debuffs start kicking in and the floors start becoming a lot more difficult past floor 50.
So like I mean I always encourage when the game like tries to challenge its player base. Like personally, I don't think poly rewards at higher floors is a good idea by itself, but I do hope that Zenless continues the trend of breaking the like implicit perspective of like what it means to quote unquote play Zenless, whereas it's going to be like you're trying to and challenge the player base to get them to play a little better in the longer term. It's like you can there's a whole discussion with this whenever it revolves around like balancing and uh like what the general player base can achieve, but I do feel like if the majority of the player base did just try even 1% harder, then chances are you would see a fair few less like complaints of generally what goes on with the game in terms of like balancing and mechanics and like all the stuff that implies like the general gotcha complaints, right, about like power creep or other stuff like that. I do feel like if they got some incentive to understand the game at a little bit of a deeper level, that would like you know change Zenless's identity as a gotcha game as a whole. And I think for their longevity, I would probably want to see that more. But I don't know. It's a whole discussion for like what the majority of the player base wants out of this type of game, and I understand that this isn't the type of game to be played in that specific way. I'm still getting used to that, but it seems that's just the case.
well, so the argument with that is that I don't think it's necessarily, you got you got to remember that ultimately Zenless is designed with the casual mindset,
Right.
period. Yeah. So if the devs wanted it to be more intense, they would make it more intense, but they don't, because that's bad for business. You don't want to make things too difficult for people, because then they won't pay, right? As much as
like
it
the Dark Souls discussion all over again.
Yeah, but it's different when it comes to gotcha, and honestly any like free to play game that relies on people willingly paying for things to get their revenue.
Yeah, you don't want to make
it
have to be paid. You want to make it like an optional, and if you want to make it easier to put the wallet there, but you don't need the wallet.
but
Like
the same. I just want to finish my point. The you also can't dissuade the people who are actually just playing for free, because that is also an important PR thing. You need a comparison point for the people who spend money too. And Zenless is kind of a weird exception to that, because people who pay money can get bad scores because they're bad at the game. People who don't pay money can get insane scores because they know how to allocate their resources. So it's a very odd, complicated discussion. Looping it back around to the tower, it's kind of the reason why I like it that they put rewards and they capped the majority of the important rewards behind like a small skill gap. Like you just got to get to floor 15 and you get most of them. Like the most valuable ones.
Like I said, I do think that it's good and probably for the best that they keep the rewards so or keep the best rewards so low so that they're so accessible to the player base, but also like again with the content being fresh in your mind from recent updates, and also like giving you a look at what could be if one decided to go deeper on their own. I think it's a good encompassing snapshot of like kind of the mechanics as a whole in this new tower update. But there's definitely like it does get a little difficult like when you start to factor like a whole bunch of new mechanics in. Like Miasma isn't going to be the last exclusive mechanic that we see, but there might be like some complications of like there might be so much content to remember, or like try to fight against in terms of this like unique combat content, that it becomes a lot more difficult in the future to justify putting rewards higher like that. And it I understand that that's where it is for a reason.
Yeah. I do like that we'll go into mechanics right now, is that Miasma is very better than just a shield. It is by far a better mechanic.
Yeah.
I really like Miasma as a mechanic, to be honest, but you can talk first. Yeah, AFK for that.
Miasma, I do like. I think it is better than just like generic shield that makes the enemy tankier, especially since it doesn't like once you break it, it's not like you just okay, now the shield's gone. Now you get to actually deal damage now. No, when you do break the shield, it does deal damage and give you a huge amount of stun and energy back, which is nice because it means that all that work you were doing to actually break the shield doesn't feel wasted. But I also have to acknowledge that some of the like stagger resistance and the I'm trying to think of it like, and some of the boss patterns get kind of annoying when you can't actually interrupt them. Even Seth can't interrupt Miasma sometimes, which is absurd because my boy can interrupt damn near anything.
the Miasma shield break is definitely a contender to do, but at least so the Miasma in between, I think what floor did that stop, or did they? So I think of floor like 30 or 40, the Miasma is like starting in general at the beginning, and then during the mid floors and the final floors you do get a Miasma phase during the middle as well. So
yeah, and I think it also depends on how much damage you're doing. I there is no founding for that theory. That's what it feels like. Like they kind of feel like you hit half health and then all of a sudden, oh hey, Miasma's back.
Yep.
No
Yeah,
science.
I can say like I do think the the start of the like fights having miasma and then also getting a second miasma shield, I personally think that's really cool because I personally am of the opinion that miasma is a help instead of a hindrance to your combat potential. And there's like it's mostly because of like when you deplete it, it gives you so many resources to like have options to then recover very quickly or like I guess like bounce back from like what's supposed to be the super hard phase of the fight. I can see how it's considered a bit of a time waste, or you know, kind of a inflation of artificial difficulty, because you're kind of just stalling a little bit. The miasma shield gives the enemies higher like interrupts, so you can't really interrupt their attacks as easily, and also like hyper armor to the point where if you like cap out the stun bar, you can't stun them until the shield is depleted. But I do honestly think that the shield is a good mechanic overall. Like it's well balanced, has a lot of potential to be played around. There's like some cases where you can delay or skip the miasma shield in other game modes, such as Chi defense mostly. Uh, but in tower, I think it's just generally good because you have a bit of a resource crunch after a certain point in these tower fights. If you like, honestly, even if you know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're doing, like you run into a situation a lot where you kind of just don't have resources. And I think overall, the miasma shield and also just like what they've done in tower with the fourth floor per set of 10 with the Fisher crabs has been a good help to like getting those like resource managements during the really hard fights. And also when the shield is on like all of the super small mobs at the same time, and then you just get purify after purify, you're just like literally able to just use EX for literally ever after like getting a single purify. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, those resources after the miasma breaks are really good.
Yeah, I'd like to provide a counter thing with that though. It's kind of laggy if you don't have a good computer or
Oh yeah.
like I play on PC and my computer is pretty good, but even then, like when a bunch of those pop, my computer feels it, and it's a really odd and definitely something that should not be ignored.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that on like mobile is really brutal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. It's
Point.
the freeze frames for Purify happening back to back alongside the like, you know, the similar problem with aftershock agents. Like it's been a little bit of a time to, play around. It kind of messes with my inputs a little bit sometimes.
2.0
Yeah.
in general has been hard on people's PCs. I've noticed that a lot of streamers have been having issues with like sound or just lagging. I've seen it on a couple, mostly Phantom 8 or Phantom 7, one of the two. He's had his struggles. I think he's finally fixed it, but it was a definite lag for some people. One complaint from 2.0.
Yeah, that's a wider issue though that isn't really within the scope of this. It's it's just something to note that like later in the tower it actually becomes a lot laggier because you have to be breaking miasma way more, and that can get really annoying. I know it annoyed me a bit when the game would randomly stutter, especially if you broke it during a parry, because you have the parry animation and then the miasma shield breaks, and then that's just a bunch of particle effects on screen all at once.
I will
And
also say, oh, do you have more?
well, I was just going to finish it off with it sucks, especially for people who want to play the game, but don't necessarily have the hardware for like a PlayStation 5 or a Series X or a monster PC.
Yeah, you can get that. Uh, I have my own gripe with it in general, being like this is a very like 1% issue, but I am a manual chain attack player, and if you trigger Purify, or if an aftershock like happens and the like freeze frames happen as you like try to input something like a short like a small EX or something kind of quick for a heavy hit, like a quick special. Most agents have quick specials. If you like try to input that, like at the moment that Purify or an aftershock like happens, then even though like I have the response time to let go of my special button, like it's literally just like a tap. Like it doesn't even take like 2 frames or anything. It would be probably less than the freeze frame itself, but I think there's like some hard coded like buffer time with the inputs, because if you like press it at the moment that an aftershock happens, even if I have the input like released, I still won't trigger the chain attack because the game will think I'm holding the input for some reason. And like I said, it's a very 1% issue, and like manual chain users are very rare, far and few between. But it gets on my nerves not being able to trigger a stun immediately because of that.
Yeah, I can 100% agree. I'm also a manual chain attack user, but not like the super sweaty amount. Like I usually just hold off just so I can put my buffs up. But
I am
like
not the 1%.
Yeah, I just imagine like of the people who even actually play to a serious degree, like I don't think I don't hear of many a manual chain user, and like
there are
far and
two
few
types of
between.
manual chain users: us and Haramasa players.
Yeah.
I am neither, even though I do play Haramasa every so often. Not recently, but in the last few weeks, but
I did not climb this tower with anything but Cryptbernice because I needed to maintain the agenda.
Well, since we're talking about that, I climbed this tower mostly with Jane and Vivian. Like 90% of these characters were weak to physical or
Yeah, there was like the selection's really good for uh like again all the new enemies, and also just generally lots of kind of good spread of uh weakness and resistance in general, but I do think the newer content favors physical and fire specifically.
yeah, and really does not like electric. My Sangbi sat on the sideline that entire time. She was in my teams. She was in my roster. I never once used her because they were all either neutral or electric resistant.
yeah, I was
there are
lucky.
there are a couple of sets of 10 floors with the like robot slash military enemies, but not a whole lot of them. Actually get like 20 to 30 is a pretty good stretch where I think every enemy outside of Fisher Crab and maybe Lumberjack. I forgot. No, Lumberjack's Electric Weak. Okay. But yeah, I think it's only Fisher Crab there that isn't Electric Weak in that set of 10. But
I
you
was
get a
happy
few
that
floors kind of like that.
electric is my weakest element in my roster because all I have is Haramasa, but I did not need to bring him out. I didn't need to get him. I just used Jane, Vivian, Bernice, and Miyabi, as my main 4 DPS agents, switching between those 4. And then I did have Astra and Caesar in there, but I will not go on to Caesar. I did not go on to Caesar until like level 40. That is was making sure that I did not depend on her for a majority of the levels.
My roster was it was Jane, Vivian, Yanagi, Yijuan, Yanagi. I said Yanagi already. Caesar, Stanby, and then I had Jufufu as well. That was my roster. Um, yeah, like I use Caesar regularly, even in main content, because she lets you play aggressively. But she's more of a safety net in tower than anything. Those bosses start hitting real hard.
Yeah. My roster was mostly Bernice, Lighter, and Yuzuha, just because like new best in slot team for Bernice. But I did also have Jofufu for double stun situations where I wanted to like stun enemies faster, and some enemies were easier to stun and to balance around that. And then I did also bring Astra only for like the situations where I thought I might struggle a little in these like early floors or in the like 45 because like there's usually a really hard enemy on every 5 and then every 10th floor. But if I like needed to build Astra decibels with healing, I would get her some amount of resources on the early floors of the set, and then have that as a safety net for myself. But I didn't need that for most of my climb from 1 to 60, so I'm kind of chilling.
Yeah, I think Astra was a much better agent that, or just safety net than even Caesar. Like I said, I use Astra for from 1 to 30, and then I tried 30 through 40 without Astra, used Yuzuha instead, and then 40 to whatever I switched between Caesar and Astra.
Yeah, for me, the main team that I ran was Jane, Vivian, Caesar. It's like kind of an odd team, but like Caesar does a good enough job of both keeping you safe and providing the buffs. And since the time limit isn't as restrictive as Deadly Assault, you don't feel her middling buffs as much as you would there. And then I would occasionally swap out to like Yijuan, Jufufu, Caesar if it was just mostly ether weak characters. But that was primarily what I did. And Yanagi came out on occasion. Poor Sanby got sat on the bench.
You guys don't
as a non-Caesar and non-Yishuan, and I mean I have Miyabi, but I didn't have her signature until very recently. But as someone who didn't use any of those, mostly because I don't have like a lot of the kind of good quote unquote like crutch agents for this type of gameplay, I think it's very fine without those agents. I I did kind of feel like I understand that I like kind of have the practice to know what I'm doing, but I do feel like in terms of the enemy design specifically, there's been a constant concept going through the game as it's like evolved over the past year of like there's gonna be some better matchups, there's gonna be some not as good matchups, given not only by like weakness resistance but also just general mechanics that may be implied through either reading the key info or the like general way that bosses play, whether they're like more passive, more aggressive, more agile, more stationary, etc. like faster attacks, more staggered attacks. There's a whole bunch of axes, but I think like as a whole, there's a good mix of all of these things. Although I will say, I think I've started to notice that like you can't really fit it all, but a bunch of the like older bosses like Dead End Butcher, UCC, uh, and even like Twin Marionettes, like specifically, were kind of fizzled out a little bit because I noticed they weren't here like at all. There was the single like marionette, the single Black Veil marionette that wasn't even the like it's the twin marionette like variant, but it's not the notorious marionette, but it's also not the twin marionettes that would be
Yeah.
able to heal each other if you
I
don't kill
hated the
them both
twin
within a
marionettes.
specific time.
Those were the
Uh,
struggles at the beginning for me, the twin marionette battle.
but
Ye-
yeah, like a lot of the older bosses are kind of being fizzled out for one reason or another, and I think like generally speaking, there's a good variety of matchup for every agent that uh, if you have some amount of variety, then I think you'll be okay without the likes of Yishuan, Miyabi, Yanagi, Caesar, Astra, so on.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think I don't think the crutch characters are. We say crutch characters. They're not really crutches because you still need to know what you're doing with them in order to actually use them. But like the characters that are traditionally good in long, drawn out confrontations, I guess would be the way to say it.
the the agents that um provide a like a boost, like healing, a shield, a the attacks of Yishuan and Miyabi were the fact that they have their parries. Yeah, those are the four agents I would say are crutch agents. I mean, there is the defensive agents that you have from that Pan and Seth, um, and all the defensive agents. They do provide a shield, but they're not as crutchy as the Caesar and Astra.
Yeah. So I guess should also say, just because we say crutchy, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. In fact, you should. They are very, very good. And if you are struggling, they're probably the best way to, actually get through the content.
There's also
But
no shame in using them either. It's like they're kind of just objectively they have like the better qualities of mechanics in their gameplay, like in terms of things like invincibility frames, long animations, locks and parries that Caesar and Yanagi have, the ability to like basically counter enemy attacks just like on a whim if you like even if you don't know the telegraphs, if you just like follow the prompts to a somewhat well degree, then you can make good use of all of those mechanics. But there's no shame in you in doing that as like a means to get through. It's they're there
I
for a reason. I think.
I
I think
was
that's their
never
benefit.
I was never saying that do not use them. It was just the fact that if you have them, use them. If you want to try the do the content without them, or if you don't have them, you don't actually need them too much. It is the
Oh yeah,
tower is meant for the marathon and not for the um not for the um sprinters.
the sprint.
It's for the long run. That's
yeah,
why they
I
give
just
you.
wanted to clarify that. I wanted to clarify because I have a feeling there's people who might think that we mean crutch as in you can't do anything without them. Just because crutch has had a pretty bad connotation with it in gaming circles for a while.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not the case here. Like you can basically clear with whatever you want. I said I went with only Crit Bernice as my DPS. Mind you, Crit Bernice, an anomaly agent, with an off-meta crit oriented build, and also being the only agent that I used in fire resistant specific content, like say the Miasmic Fiend or the military like robots like the Guardian Mark III and the Typhon Slugger and the specialized assault bomber. Like,
Yeah.
do whatever you want. To be honest, it's you kind of have like there's so much expression of like what you can do in this game. Like there's all those like calculations and what you can do to best your chances, but at the end of the day, you can just vibe honestly and do well if you know what you're doing. If you want to like commit to the grind that hard, go for it.
Yeah, it should also be noted too that the tower is definitely, I think, easier in general than Deadly Assault is. Like,
You are
just
given
because
a 10-minute window.
yeah, you have a 10-minute window, and not to mention that this tower also rewards you more for style than it does for actually doing damage.
We
Because
never really
this
touched on the technique points, did we?
We have not. I was gonna
no,
say we can go right into that point. Go on with your
yeah, yeah. The big thing with the whole technique is the tower emphasizes you learning the system mechanics of the game rather than like just being damaged like Deadly Assault is. And Shiyu defense, and it's something that I think is interesting because the devs haven't really done something like this except for in the tower, where your main goal isn't to do a lot of damage, it's to look cool while doing that damage.
There was
So,
the 3. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna lead into that. You can speak.
There was the 3 extra master trains that they added was the double chain attack, the assist counter, and the shoulder to shoulder. So if you kept on doing those from the trainings, you earned a good score. I was able to do all of them from the trainings except for assist counter. But while playing tower, I definitely got those score points of assist counter without trying. So
Yeah, the as a short aside, the implementation of the master mechanics, the as they're called in game, shoulder to shoulder, assist counter, and the I gotta remember what the last one is. Really
double
quickly.
chain.
Yeah, double
So,
chain.
yep.
Those are like it was mentioned earlier that they were kind of implemented as like these were things that the community like knew you could do from basically day one. Because like it's that this game has a lot of mechanical depth and like giving that to a higher degree for like the basically all of the player base to experience and find out, I think is really cool. And I also think like the new design, I agree with the new design of the tower being kind of like you can use more of the mechanics, like either make your gameplay a little flashier or just like play a little smarter. Like it incentivizes both ways of like playing flashier and like more aggressively, but you can also play more passively and like just try to survive as long as you like have a practiced fight. You're rewarded for putting in that effort as opposed to just doing damage, and I really like that as like a distincting the tower from other endgame game modes.
Yeah, and honestly, it's something that I hope they do more because kind of looping it to the crutch characters as we were calling them, they like Caesar in general in a lot of late game content is not the best. Like she's good, she's a decent support, and she offers a more aggressive playstyle, like I said before. But like if you have Astra, you'd rather use Astra. Like if you're given the opportunity.
Yep.
then so the thing is that it gives characters like Caesar, like Panda, and like Seth more time to shine because their buffs tend to revolve around more longevity compared to like trying to think compared to just doing as much damage as physically possible.
Yeah, but the access of support for defense class agents in general, I think, is a like survivability versus like just doing support related things like in shield form. Uh, I think having the option of a second healer in the form of Panyan, who uh, alongside Astra and Avakabu being the only sources of healing. Actually, also Miss Esme, the new
That was
Bangu,
about
did also
to
release.
say.
And technically speaking, if you have both Evelyn and Astra, then Snap also works. But besides the point,
Yep.
like having so few sources of healing, I think Pan like can really shine for especially Yixuan players who take Yixuan into the tower because Pan is a generally good teammate for Yixuan as a whole.
In specific. Still no second rupture unit.
Well, yeah, but there's like that aspect of that, but also you know, Ben having the like the essentially like block counter thing where like it's a little harder to use than Caesar, but I think that makes sense because he's an A rank agent. He can basically like deflect attacks with like similar success and like counter enemy attacks. And then Seth also having his charge blade, the ability to basically interrupt any non Goliath boss at any given time. And since there are no like bosses like the mechs or UCC in this tower iteration, I think Seth sees a lot of value for his ability to interrupt enemy actions, especially against doppelgangers. I think those guys are so agile. I would probably take Seth into doppelganger floors just because like I tend to play anomaly into those floors anyway. But it's like no, they're really cool. That they have this use specifically for tower.
Yeah, and I do hope that we get more battle or more content that's more aligned with marathons than sprints because most of the end game content is sprints. It's why you see characters like Miyabi do so well is because they're just as good for trying to think like their strengths don't shine in a sprint is what I think I'm trying to get across.
Let's circle our for defensive agent. Let's end with this. The defensive agents are actually this is the event or the end game for defensive agents to shine. And
yes,
that is I do like the fact that they have their need in this in this end game.
yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is an end game, and that does mean that like to fully get the benefit of defense agents, whereas people would normally like focus on building their DPSs and probably slack a little bit on their supports in general. I think similar goes for defense agents, where it's like you some of them have their scaling benefits that increase the size of their shield, and some of them have their scaling benefits that increase the like thing that their shield does, or like the buff that their shield provides. In either case, I think like you still have to come at this with a sense of preparation in order to do well in tower. Like, so I generally consider it like a different axis of endgame compared to Shiyu and Deadly Assault. Like Chap said, it's like this is more marathon-y, like more intentional planning and preparation of the fight itself compared to like find the weakness and match it in order to kill the enemy fast as possible. We've been saying this a lot, but that's because it's kind of just true. These fights aren't as long as Deadly Assault. They can be fairly long compared to Shiyu runs, like if you're if you're not practiced. But all in all, it's like you have your set of 10 floors that you need to manage your agent pool and your health resources with, and so having that extra axis of utility in the defense agents, the healers, what have you, it becomes a factor. It's it's kind of what the mode is about.
Mhm.
Let's circle back to the scoring of the new scoring mechanic that they added to Tower. Do you feel like the flashiness of the score really mattered to you, or like you wanted to make sure to get those demon medals of no damage, or getting those S ranks scores?
As much as I like them doing the whole, uh, you know, you get to see the tech that you can do. Honestly, for most of it, it wasn't that relevant. Like, if you're good enough to actually get deep into the tower, you were already doing that kind of stuff anyway, because it helps maximize your damage. So it's for the benefit of the new players, or the players who don't necessarily know what's up. But I also think it's kind of moot. I don't know how to describe it fully. It's like,
You don't need to do the big score of S, and if you can at least clear the tower. If you beat the guy by minute 9:59, you beat that level. You can go to the next one. You don't need the A or the S or the demon.
well, I was more gonna say that it's just easy to get the S ranks, because if you're strong enough that you go deep into the tower, then you would have been doing the techniques anyway. You would have already known how to do them.
Yeah,
So
the shoulder to shoulder, the double chain, and the whatever assist that they added for that. I think that was the main score points that they had for this.
Those aren't the
yeah,
only ones. There's a lot more. There's actually a lot more. I don't know if the B-roll being used for this pod
Oh
or
yeah,
for this episode is going to be uh what I had given Soft Image, but the first like I don't know 5 to 10 minutes of like getting into the Tower Quest for the first time was just reading literally every single thing about the technique points and what they changed the uh between the previous iteration and this iteration of Battle Tower. And I prefer that style of tutorial so that I can kind of sprint into the gameplay uninterrupted and like have a good time. But my god, there are so many technique points like
I didn't
classes that you
realize
can
that. Yeah,
use.
I just
Like it's
looking at my
basically just
score.
for every single thing. And there's also a neat thing for doing all that, where like if you look at the technique points menu in the thing while you have your agents like selected, they actually give you like certain tips on some agent mechanics to maximize some more technique points with regards to like special mechanics that some agents have. Like I think a pretty common one is special dodges. A fair few agents have alternative methods of dodge that aren't, the dodge button. A couple of agents like Evelyn, Chingy, Lighter, they can do dodges like during like certain parts of their attacks or like through certain actions like EX specials or during Chingy's like basic 5 finisher thing, or with lighter, the Shuffle EX also counts as that. They basically give you tips on all of that stuff per agent, and it's actually really cool to like. I'm gonna go through that and look at that at some point and see like what else they have documented, because they also noticed for Yuzaha, she gets technique points when you use her like second assist follow up after the flash from her umbrella. So basically, the long assist follow up compared to the short assist follow up, you get technique points for using the long one, and like they tell you that that's a thing that you can do. That's really cool. I appreciate that, honestly.
Like,
Yeah, it's very, very nice that they make their game mechanics known.
I think some of the names are kind of funny. There's Flowing Syrup, Like Your Shadow, Mirror of the Soul, Your Time Has Come, Health Bar Reversal. That's an interesting one too. Silent Frostfall. So there's a lot of interesting names that they have for their score, and you can get.
And generally speaking, all the names and like all of their like movesets, the fact that they have to come up with, not to glaze anything real quick, but they have to come up with, agent name and then agent mechanic and then agent moveset and like, other stuff like, disc sets and all that. They have to come up with unique names for literally every single individual aspect of all of their agents. And if you look, just like scroll through the skills and like core skills and all the buff effects and whatnot, like there are so many names, which I know, like I've heard, people are kind of irked by it a little bit just because like there's so many terms for sometimes saying the same thing, but otherwise like just there's a lot of confusion when some of the names overlap sometimes, but you have a lot of names in this game. There is so much detail when you really look at it in this game. It's kind of crazy.
You gotta have a name for everything.
That was just a quick aside.
Yeah, so I think that bleeds a little bit into like a wider game thing where like people get gripes with that when it comes to like they're wordy, like agent abilities are wordy, and like the game is mechanically deep and there's lots of things you can do, but the game kind of makes it difficult for you to even realize you can do them. So that's kind of like another one of those topics that's not really in the scope of what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Let's go over a good level 4 tidbit. Chap, did you know about level 4 of each 10 levels?
Level 4 of each 10 levels. I noticed it. I noticed that they were mimics, but I didn't know there's like any tricks to them. I just kind of walked up to the chests and said hello.
Steph, did you actually figure out how to know what the chests do, the mimics?
So, the Fisher Crab is an enemy that existed before it was added to Tower. It was similar to everything else. It was in the 2.0 story, in the investigation zones that they added. Sometimes you would come across a cargo truck that, like, looked kind of non-suspecting or, like, was kind of just, your typical cargo truck tests, just kind of in sometimes of a weird spot, like, in a strangely open area with no other enemies around it, or like not tucked away in a corner. And you would come to realize, like, intuitively sometimes that they were Fisher crabs, but I did look for the difference before they were like in Tower. So like I I did know like how to tell which one was the fisher crab, but what I didn't know until you told me was that by opening 3 of the chests that aren't the fisher crab, you can just skip the floor. I did not know that.
Which I think is kind of funny.
So if you go to a chest and it flashes green, that is a good chest that is not a fisher crab. If it stays green, then it's a fisher crab. So it is a very much a small indicator that when you go into a chest, if it flashes green for just a sec, that is a chest that you should pick. And if it does not flash green, if it stays green, then do not pick that one because it is a fisher crab. And then like Sev said, if you hit 3 of them, then you complete the level and then you can pick up the other chests without having to, and you get health for each one of those chests that you open that you do not without the fisher crab. You get a health. So level X.4 is a healing level for everybody.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really small but like noticeable detail when you're looking for it. Just like the lights on the sides of each of the trucks, you can tell they're normally red, and the mimic or fisher crab chests are green.
You know that. Good to know for next time.
Let's go into a quick thing on dodging and defensive and agent switching. Did you notice, at least maybe in the higher levels, that at least when I was using Caesar, just remembering the fact that if you switch at the wrong time, that other agent will get hit that you switch out of.
Oh yeah.
It becomes more of a problem when they take away the damage indicators, which I don't like that. I don't like them taking away that mechanic. Like, yeah, it makes it more difficult, but to me, it makes it more difficult in a very unfun way, where the enemy design in this game is quite busy. So the reason that they made those indicators was as a indication that, yes, they are attacking. You should dodge. And I think wouldn't be so bad if they didn't also take away the sound cue.
Oh yeah, they took away the sound cue too.
Yeah, if the sound cue was still there, they just took away the indicator. I think that would be, I would be less irked about it. But the fact that they take both away and you just kind of gotta guess makes it real difficult to play with characters that really, really like parrying, like Vivian or Seth. And I don't like it. I do not like it.
So my thoughts first on the like, you know, the whole thing with trying to do agent swaps or agent actions a little too fast and leaving them lingering on field. That is a problem that some agents have over others, like long animation times for ending their attacks if you cancel out of them, or like, you know, shoulder to shoulder, like quick swap. That is a problem that some agents have, and that has lost me a numerous clear without taking damage things that I'm not that annoyed about, but it gets on my nerves a little bit sometimes because I like to play well. But I also think that while that becomes harder with the removal of indicators in higher floors, specifically after 50, I will also say they indicators as a whole as mechanic, I think is not as consistent as it may seem. Because with newer enemy design, especially as time has gone on, some of the attacks in like some older bosses and some older like higher and lower tier enemies, like you never really think about it, but the removal of indicators for like lower like tier standard mobs and some elite enemies, like you're not ever really paying attention to their telegraphs until you go into a floor for the first time that has something like, let's say, 3 flame cantors, and then they do all their fake swings, and then you don't see the indicator for their real swing, and it's like, oh well, I just got hit after they did a swing that I thought was going to hit me the first time. Like,
I think that's more a criticism of the enemy design in the game.
yeah, that's that's the whole thing. But I think as a whole for indicators, like, there's been like a large number of inconsistencies when it comes to using indicators to figure out tells in the first place as time has gone on, where you have indicators need to be like really well timed in order to really glean the information out of them. Some indicators will have really good timings, like a good amount of response time between the indication and the actual attack, uh, usually like half a second or so. There are some longer and there are some shorter. And when it comes to learning enemies, like I play this game with the intent to study enemy like telegraphs and improve my gameplay through understanding how a boss works. When it comes to learning about that, sometimes the indicators just really don't help. And I've noticed this on more than a few occasions where it's like I'll go into a, Chiyu floor, a deadly assault stage, a notorious hunt was another thing for figuring out the other bosses for a little bit. There's a lot of misaligned indicators, and it's like a fair few of them like just don't help. You either get a really long assist prompt or you get the indication at a point where the visual of the enemy is like easier to tell at a specific point in its animation before it attacks, but the indication happens like a whole like half second earlier than that. And it's like when coming at it from the perspective of looking at the enemy animations, like I don't feel like indicators are that big of a changer than as like it may seem, but I can definitely understand, and I'm not saying that this is the correct way to play at all, or that not doing this is incorrect or anything like that. Like I understand that this isn't a thing that everyone does, not even close, and like I really like the removal of indicators only because it reinforces my practice in learning enemy moves and not playing reactionary based on essentially a sound and like looking for the indicator game. But it is very chaotic and messy when like you have a bunch of enemy animations and a bunch of smaller enemy animations, and then everything you're trying to focus on doing with your agents themselves, and damage numbers and what have you, all the particle effects, and it's very messy and busy on the screen, as Chap had mentioned. I can see how not having indicators removes a lot of the appeal that players kind of see for the game, like with the amount of combat depth that it does have. Uh, the indicators are a big help to, bring that clarity. And when you lose that and you haven't practiced anything, it can suck. It feels bad to just kind of get curb stomped by an enemy because you can't really tell with like where they are like in their animation before you just get hit. And
well, like I said before, it's a criticism of general enemy design in Zenless, and you can be critical of things that you enjoy. Zenless has a pretty messy character design from the enemy perspective, and that's purposeful. Ethereals are designed to be chaotic messes because they're supposed to be chaotic messes. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that it does make it difficult to discern them in a fast-paced environment. It's it's the difference between, God, I don't even know. It's like the classic example for character identification is Team Fortress 2. Like you go and look at character design essays on YouTube or what have you. 90% of the time, Team Fortress 2 will show up because the game was designed from the ground up with visual clarity in mind. But if you compare it to games like Overwatch and Valorant, they were made with silhouettes not in mind because they were designed for the UI elements of the game to help you understand what's going on. Zenless was designed with that principle in mind because the enemy designs are cluttered most of the time, and there's going to be a lot of stuff on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad thing.
Go on.
It's just a thing. And once you take away those indicators, it can make it incredibly frustrating to actually deal with the enemies like that. For characters like Jane, their attacks are very telegraphed. Jane and Hugo and any of the doppelgangers are the exception to this rule because they are telegraphed. You see them wind up and you see them get ready to attack. But when you're against a horde of like small ethereals and then you also have to deal with like a Dullahan, it becomes very messy because you don't know when the random ethereals that are outside of your field of view are going to attack until they hit you.
There is some agent voice lines are like present with some stronger attacks or like attacks that are out of your view, out of your field. I don't know what the exact range of like view is, but there are some agent voice lines where it's like they'll basically warn you you're about to get hit from behind. That is a thing that exists, but it's fairly inconsistent from what I know. I can't really tell when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why the sound cue is probably the most important aspect of the indicators.
I want to say if you have issues with there being no sound and you have to get that visual cue, turn off the numbers. This tower is not a numbers. You don't need to look at how big of a hit you did on an enemy. You want to be able to dodge. You want to make sure that that enemy, you are watching the whole fight the whole time. So turning off the numbers, watching the visual cues, or if you don't have the sound, whatever, having the you see the windups and the swings when there's no numbers in front. It does help a lot.
See, yeah. And I agree with you there, but I guarantee you that some people who are watching this didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, so if you go into your settings, if you want to do it right now, and pause the episode. If you go into your settings in game and then go to the other tab, it's in the options tab. You can get to it from either the main menu or in combat at any time. If you go to the other tab and then the first option on that should be almost always, I think, on both console/PC and mobile clients. I think the option is first. There should be show damage numbers, and you can enable or disable that at will. And once you do so, if you disable it, damage numbers won't show up. The text for things like assaults, disorders, impairs, all that stuff will still show up when they happen if you're playing anomaly teams, but it's much less frequent. There's a lot less going on at the enemy itself, so you can see them a lot better if you're a visual player like that.
And then you can also turn them right back on when you're not doing tower or doing a particular fight. It's not like it's end all be all. That's same with manual chain attacks and that stuff. You can turn it off and on.
Very useful.
It's just, I guarantee you, there is a very significant portion of people who didn't even know that was a thing that you
could do. It is what it is.
Let's do one final PowerPoint or point before we go to the final thoughts of level 50 and higher. Sev, what do you think of getting to level 60? Was it really that much of a struggle without the visual cues?
So given I am a player of the perspective of like, going into fights with the intent to like understand enemies and practice kind of like out the bat, like I learn the fights basically as I go. So for me, and like being very well versed in that kind of method of play overall, it was not that bad for me. Like and in like previous iterations of Tower as well. Like the removal of indicators, I think, is like it's generally one of my favorite things about Tower itself. I get it's a very decisive or divisive rather mechanic as a whole, but I really like it personally. It gives me the reason to lock in, basically. I enjoy the thrill of the challenge. I enjoy challenging things when I have to engage with games because that's what I like playing games for in general. But overall, I did not think it was all that bad to have some of the indicators removed on. I only got to floor 60, and the enemies here, like, there were some floors in 50 to 60 just by itself that were kind of a mess. That's wrong. Floor 58, the triple flame cantors, I will say, I've I don't know how to feel about this enemy, and I especially don't know how to feel about this enemy when there's 3 of them at the same time. Because similar to Thanatos, it's like they kind of spread themselves out, and like they can do a lot of like lunged ranged attacks that like kind of go across like the field at varying like rates, but they also, like, as part of their enemy design, have a lot of fake swings and delayed swings. Their telegraphs are like really long, as opposed to most of the enemies in the game that have like they start moving and then their attacks kind of follow shortly after. These guys have really long animations for enemies, and they're elites, and there's 3 of them to keep track of. And on top of that, these guys are the first
They summoners.
second notorious marionette exists. The second iteration of enemy in the game that can summon other enemy types. And when you have them reach that point where they just put their thing down and then spawn like 3 or 4 each of these, like, they're called Huskrons in the game, but like the little rock dudes or like whatever they are, they spawn so many of them at the same time. It becomes a whole mess to try and navigate that without indicators. That that one is that one is an experience, and I am shocked I got the demon medal on that floor. Now that I look at it,
and again, that ties into what I said before, but
yeah,
it gets messy.
But as a whole, though, like there's like examples where it doesn't work as well, and then there are examples where I really like the one-on-one fights a lot more with the bosses specifically. Like 55 was a specialized assault bomber. That guy has like not as bad of the visual clutter animation stuff. He does throw a smoke bomb from time to time, and that kind of screws you up a little bit. But I think that guy works fine without indicators. And then 60 is the single old marionette. 65, I didn't get to this, but I can see ahead. 65 is Moors and Pulchra and doppelgangers in general. I think they have the smaller models, and when you use the wrong agents that have a lot going on with them specifically, it's really hard to see doppelgangers as a whole. But it's not too bad. I think these enemies are just annoying in general, Moors and Pulchra. But and then floor 70 is the Miasmic Fiend, which I haven't learned well enough to tell how I'm going to do on that without indicators yet, but I don't think it'll be too bad.
It was not too bad for me. I was able to get that myself. So before Deadly Assault Miasmic Fiend, I faced level 70 Miasmic Fiend, and that's how I got better at Miasmic Fiend and getting those visual cues. Was playing it in tower at level 70.
I see. What a brave first introduction to that anime.
I mean, there was in the earlier tower you did face the fiend at one point, but when you got to level 70, you had to get those visual cues down on a new boss.
But yeah,
I don't have much to add,
I
and
generally
didn't
don't
get that
like.
far.
I generally don't have of a much of a grievance with the idea specifically. There are some applications where it works better than others, and I can, definitely understand Chap's point at least with, it one not being for everyone, but two also like being kind of implemented in a way that you know uh, diminishes the enemy design work as opposed to like having the mechanic as a whole or whatever I think that was the point you were making overall.
Yeah.
Well, it was more a clash of the mechanic exists because the enemies are busy by nature. So like removing it reveals a lot of flaws with the design of the enemies, making them unreadable. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So like it serves a purpose, and that's to make it so that you understand, hey, I'm attacking, get ready to dodge or block or parry or whatever. But when it comes to removing it, then the gaps in the character design show themselves, and it's not as bad when you're facing one, but it starts becoming a compounding issue when they start throwing 4, 5, 6, 7 enemies at you, or even 3 really aggressive, strong enemies. Especially if they're ethereals. It's a little better when it comes to like the mercenaries, like the punchy guys and the shooty guys. But when they send like Dullahans and Thanatoses in huge numbers at you, it can get pretty overwhelming. Random projectiles and random across the map stabs, and unless you have them all right in front of you.
I had a struggle on level 68 with the ionized Fraubots, the brutes, and then after you beat each one of those, they summoned a little Critodia, the ethereals that float around and then dive at you. Like that was not fun.
Kiting the 3 big guys, and then as you kill them, the like smaller guys spawn and just kind of snipe you. They have no sound, and the big enemies typically block where they are before they fly at you. They're really hard to see. That floor is really annoying.
Yeah, and again, it's just the big reason why I think the indicators become very annoying. But
right, yeah, I get that.
All right.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, I just want to say, weirdly enough, my hard point during my like floor 1 to 50 climb was 32. Not because it was a hard floor, but because I killed the enemies too fast to get enough points. So it's currently stuck at A rank because I just deal too much damage.
I think I had a floor that was like that a couple of times. Right, I like fought for the medal on floor 60 because I had basically been killing the floor 60 marionette in 49 to 51 seconds or something like that. And I wasn't getting enough points. One, because I was getting hit, but two, I just wasn't getting enough points, even with the bonus, to like if I did no hit to get the demon medal. So I just kind of like slowed down and did a couple more like farming things for a couple more technique points, and that got me there.
Yeah. It's just
It was
it's
kind of
funny.
funny.
It's funny that there are some levels that you just deal too much damage if you're well built.
My last final thought is the agreeing with Seb that the enemies were very diverse. They were very like you could very much express your teams that you wanted to build. You didn't need a full like 3 different teams in order to beat this time around. It was like you can do it with one team basically, or a one team variant, or even just a 2 teams is what I did basically. I had 2 anomaly teams and switching between those 2 to get up to the from one fort to the next is what I had to do, or what I did to beat Tower.
I just let Jane go loose. That's pretty much it.
My
Jane and her
Crypternese is
dodges.
powerful.
All right. Any other final thoughts before we end the podcast? It is at the minute 20 or minute and the hour 20 minute 21 minute mark.
Yeah, I'm good. I think we've gone over the major things with the battle tower. I don't think there's a lot of topics that you can branch off to, but I think they're not in the scope of this podcast. Perhaps could be talked about on a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a whole, I like the improvements they made to Tower in general. The improvements of like moving away from just being straight fights, and allowing you to express more of your like practice and rotation, and utilize the game mechanics more to be able to do high like score related things, alongside like there is still kind of a standard of like damage that you would need to do in order to not have too much struggle as a whole. But it's like if you're able to get pretty far with it, it's really fun. I think they hit it on the head with kind of making this its own thing. I really like it.
Me too. I agree.
With that, we will end the podcast with those final thoughts. Seb, how can we find out about you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Savadra. I tend to stream pretty late in the EST time zone hours, as I usually work from the midday to the late night. But I can usually be caught streaming on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays around 11 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. And I also have a YouTube channel that I'm trying to upload more on. I mentioned it in the last episode, but I did recently release a guide video on the Miasmic Priest, Overseer Mevarak. If you are having trouble with that boss or otherwise want to look at understanding that boss a little more, I do have that, and I want to make more guides like that in the future. So if you want to see those, then please do follow or subscribe. And you can also talk to me. I think I'm pretty talkable.
I myself am a DA runner for YouTube. You can find me at SoftyMage on YouTube as well as on Twitch. I do for YouTube DA bosses with a twist of a sound twist or any sort of like, instead of just a regular showcase, I do something cool with it. And then yeah, I do stream every most Mondays evenings in the US, and for a couple hours. And Chap, where can we find you?
You can find me around. Usually, I don't have any specific social media, but I do help moderate the official, or not official, but the fan community startup PvP Discord server. That's probably your best bet in relation to Zenless. Otherwise, I don't know. You'll probably see me around. I appear in weird places.
Yeah, we We gotta post the Discord as much as possible. We need more members. Come join the Discord. Linked in the description. And with that, we are signing out. Thank you guys so much for joining. That was a great conversation. Really, lot of talk on the tower and getting a lot of detail into that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
That's signing out.
See ya.
On the next one.